Outside my new front door, the street is full of leaves. My lawn slopes down to the sidewalk. The grass is still green. The life is going out of it. Red berries wither on the tree beside my white colonial stoop. In the driveway, my Volvo with blue leather seats. Colorado plates sits facing the brick garage. And right next to the car is a cord of new firewood. Pine, elm, cherry. I burn a vicious amount of firewood these days. Even more than the L0athing brothers. When a man gives up drugs, he wants big fires in his life. All night long, every night. Huge flames in the fireplace, and the volume turned all the way up. I've ordered more speakers to go with my new Macintosh amp. Also a 50-watt boombox for the FM car radio. You want good strong seatbelts with the boombox, they say, because otherwise the bass riffs will bounce you around inside like a goddamn ping pong ball. A very bad act in traffic, especially along these elegant boulevards of our nation's capital. One of the best and most beneficial things about coming east now and then is that it tends to provoke a powerful understanding of the westward movement in U.S. history. After a few years on the coast or even in Colorado, you tend to forget just exactly what it was that put you on the road going west in the first place. You live in L.A. a while, and before long you start cursing traffic jams on the freeways in the warm Pacific dusk. And you tend to forget that in New York City, you can't even park. Forget about driving. Even in Washington, which is still a relatively loose and open city in terms of traffic, it costs me about $1.50 an hour every time I park downtown, which is nasty. Well, the shock is not so much the money cost as the rude understanding that it is no longer considered either sane or natural to park on the city streets. If you happen to find a spot outside beside a parking meter, you don't dare use it because the odds are better than even if somebody will come along and either steal your car or reduce it to twisted rubble, besides because you haven't left the keys in it. There's nothing unusual, they tell me, about coming back to your car and finding the radio aerial torn off. The windshield wiper's been up in the air like spaghetti and all the windows smashed. For no particular reason except to make sure you know just exactly where it's at these days. Where indeed. Where indeed. 5:30 in the morning, I can walk outside. Piss casually off my stoop, watch the lawn drying slowly from a white glaze of frost. Life runs fast and mean in this town. It's like living in an armed camp, a condition of constant fear. Washington is about 72% black, and the shrinking white population has backed itself into an elegant-looking ghetto in the northwest quadrant of town, which seems to have made things a lot easier for the black marauders who have turned places like chic Georgetown and once stylish Capitol Hill into hellishly paranoid fear zones. What? Washington Post columnist Nicholas von Hoffman recently pointed out that the Nixon-Mitchell administration is seemingly obsessed with restoring law and order in the land at almost any cost. seems totally unconcerned that Washington, D.C. has become the rape capital of the world. One of the most dangerous areas in town is the once fashionable district known as Capitol Hill. This is the section immediately surrounding the Senate Congress office. Building's a very convenient place to live for the thousands of young clerks, aides, and secretaries who work up there at the pinnacle. The peaceful, tree-shaded streets on Capitol Hill look anything but menacing. Brick colonial townhouses with cut-glass doors and tall windows looking out on the Library of Congress and the Washington Monument. When I came here to look for a house or apartment about a month ago, I checked around town, figured Capitol Hill was the logical place to locate. "Good God, man," I said to my friend from the liberal New York Post. "You can't live there. It's a goddamn jungle." Crime figures for the district are so heinous, they embarrass even J. Edgar Hoover. Rape is said to be up 80% this year over 1970. And a recent rash of murders, averaging about one a day, has mashed the morale of the local police to a new low. Of the 250 murders this year, only 36 have been solved. And the Washington Post says the cops are about to give up. Meanwhile, things like burglaries, street muggings, random assaults are so common that they are no longer considered news. The Washington Evening Star, one of the city's 3 dailies, is located in the Southeast District, a few blocks from the Capitol. In a windowless building that looks like the vault at Fort Knox. Getting into the Star to see somebody is almost as difficult as getting into the White House. Visitors are scrutinized by hired cops and ordered to fill out forms that double as hall passes. So many Star reporters have been mugged, raped, menaced, that they come and go in fast taxis. With good reasons, no. Like people running the gauntlet, fearful, with good reason, of every sudden footfall between the street and the bright lit safety of a newsroom guard station. This kind of attitude is hard for a stranger to cope with. For the past few years, I have lived in a place where I never even bothered to take the keys out of my car, much less try to lock up the house. Locks were more a symbol than a reality, and if things ever got serious, there was always a .44 Magnum. But in Washington, you get the impression, if you believe what you hear from even the most liberal insiders, that just about everybody you see on the street is holding at least a .38 special, or maybe worse. Not that it matters a hell of a lot at 10 feet, but it makes you a trifle nervous to hear that nobody in his or her right mind would dare to walk alone from the Capitol building to a car in the parking lot, without fear of later on having to crawl naked and bleeding to the nearest police station. Oh, this sounds terrible, and that was my reaction at first. Come on! It can't be that bad. You wait and see, they said. And meanwhile, keep your doors locked. I immediately called Colorado and had another Doberman shipped in. If this is what's happening to this town, I felt the thing to do was get right on top of it. But paranoia gets very heavy when there's no humor in it. And it occurs to me now that maybe this is what happens to whatever remains of the liberal power structure in Washington. Getting beaten in Congress is one thing, even if you get beaten a lot. But when you slink out of the Senate chamber with your tail between your legs and then have to worry about getting mugged, stomped, and raped in the Capitol parking lot by a trio of renegade Black Panthers. Well, it tends to bring you down a bit and warp your liberal instincts. There is no way to avoid racist undertones here. The simple, heavy truth is that Washington is mainly a black city, and that most of the violent crime is therefore committed by blacks, not always against whites, but often enough to make that relatively wealthy white population very nervous about random social contacts with their black fellow citizens. After only 10 days in this town, I have noticed the fear syndrome clouding even my own mind. I find myself ignoring black hitchhikers. And every time I do it, I wonder, why the fuck did you do that? And I tell myself, well, I'll pick up the next one I see. And sometimes I do, but not always. My arrival in town was not mentioned by any of the society colonists. It was shortly after dawn, as I recall, when I straggled into Washington just ahead of the rush hour. Government worker, carpool traffic, boiling up the Maryland suburbs. Humping along the slow lane on U.S. Interstate 70 South, like a crippled steel pissant. Dragging a massive orange U-Haul trailer full of books and important papers. Feeling painfully slow and helpless because the Volvo was never made for this kind of work. It's a quick little beast, and one of the best ever built for rough road, mud, and snow driving. But not even this new 6-cylinder Super Volvo is up to hauling 2,000 pounds of heavy swill across the country from Woody Creek, Colorado to Washington, D.C. The odometer read 2155 when I crossed the Maryland line as the sun came up over Hagerstown. Still confused after getting lost in a hamlet called Breezewood in Pennsylvania, I had stopped there to ponder the drug question with two freaks I met on the turnpike. They had blown a tire east of Everett, but nobody would stop to lend them a jack. They had a spare tire, and a jack too, for that matter, but no jack handle. No way to crank up the car and put the spare on. They had gone out to Cleveland from Baltimore to take advantage of the brutally suppressed used car market in the vast urban web around Detroit. And they picked up the '66 Ford Fairlane for $150. I was impressed. Shit, they said. You can pick up a goddamn new Thunderbird out there for $750. All you need is cash, man. People are desperate. There's no work out there, man. They're selling everything. It's down to a dime on the dollar. Shit, I can sell any car. I can sell any car I get my hands on around Detroit. For twice the money in Baltimore. Well, I said I would walk to some people with capital. Maybe get into that business. If things were as good as they said. Well, they assured me that I could make a natural fortune if I could drum up enough cash. Set up a steady shuttle between Detroit, Toledo, Cleveland area. Places like Baltimore, Philly, Washington. All you need, they said, is some dollars in front and some guys to drive the car. Right, I said, and some jack handles. What? Jack handles for scenes like these. They laughed. Yeah, a jack handle or so might have saved a lot of trouble. They've been waving frantically at traffic for about 3 hours before I came by. And in truth, I only stopped because I couldn't quite believe what I thought I'd just seen. Here I was, all alone on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, on a fast downhill grade, running easily for a change. When suddenly out of the darkness in the corner of my right eye, I glimpsed what appeared to be a white gorilla running towards the road. I hit the brakes and pulled over. What the fuck was that? I had noticed a disabled car as I crested the hill. But the turnpikes and freeways are full of abandoned junkers these days. And you don't really notice them in your brain until you start to zoom past one and suddenly have to swerve left to avoid killing a big furry white animal lunging into the road on its hind legs. A white bear! Agnew's other son? At this time of the morning, I was bored from bad noise on the radio, half drunk from doing a quart of wild turkey between Chicago and the Altoona exit, so I figured, why not? Check it out. When I was moving along about 70 at the time, and I forgot about the trailer. So by the time I got my whole act stopped, I was 500 yards down the turnpike, and I couldn't back up. But I was still curious, so I set the blinker lights flashing on the Volvo and started walking back up the road in pitch darkness, with a big flashlight in one hand and a 357 Magnum in the other. No point getting stopped and fucked over, I thought, by wild beasts or anything else. My instincts were purely humanitarian. But what about the thing I was going to look out for? You read about these people in the Reader's Digest, blood-crazy dope fiends who crouch beside the highway and prey on innocent travelers. Maybe Manson or the ghost of Charlie Starkweather, you never know. And that warning works both ways. Here were these two poor freaks, broke and hopelessly stoned, shot down beside the freeway for lack of nothing more than a 90-cent jackhandle. And now, after 3 hours of trying to flag down a helping hand, they finally catch the attention of a drunken lunatic who rolls a good quarter-mile or so before stopping and then creeps back toward them in the darkness with a 357 Magnum in his hand. A vision like this is enough to make a man wonder about the wisdom of calling for help. For all they knew, I was half mad on PCP, eager to fill my empty wild turkey jug with enough fresh blood to make the last leg of the trip to Washington and apply for White House press credentials. Nothing like a big hit of red corpuscles to give a man the right lift for a rush into politics. Ah, motherfucker! But this time, things worked out. As they usually do when you go with your instincts. And when I finally got back to the derailed junker, goddamn, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. Goddamn, you son of a bitch. Where am I? I didn't tell her there was a little hat. Don't talk to me in Swahili. White bear, rushing. The road had nothing more to do. Nothing more than Jerry. Wrapped in a goddamn furry white blanket from a Goodwill store in Baltimore. Finally getting so desperate, he decided to do anything necessary to make it somebody sup. At least 100 cars and trucks zipped past. He said, I know they could see me, because most of them swerved out into the passing lane. Even a cop car. This is the first time in my goddamn life that I had really wanted a cop to stop me. Shit, they supposed to help people, right? Lester, his friend, was too twisted to even get out of the car until we started cranking it up. The Volvo jack wouldn't work, but I had a huge screwdriver that we managed to use as a jack handle. When Lester finally got out, he didn't say much. But finally his head seemed to clear and he helped put the tire on. Then he looked up at me while Jerry tightened the bolts and said, Say, man, you have anything to smoke? Smoke, I said. Do I look like the kind of person to be carrying marijuana? Lester eyed me for a moment, then shook his head. Well, shit, he said. Let's smoke some of ours. Well, not here, I said. Those blue lights, about 100 yards from where my car's parked, is a state police barracks. Let's get some coffee down in Breezewood. There's bound to be a truck stop. Jerry nodded. It's cold as a bastard out here. If we want to get loaded, let's go get someplace where it's warm. They gave me a ride down to the Volvo, then followed me into Breezewood to a giant truck stop. This is terrible shit, Lester muttered, handing the joint to Jerry. There's nothing worth a damn for sale these days. It's got so the only thing you can get off is the only thing you can get off on is smack. Jerry nodded. The waitress appeared with more coffee. You boys are sure laughing a lot, she said. What's so funny at this hour in the morning? Lester fixed her with a front toothless smile, two glittering eyes. It might have seemed dangerous if he hadn't been in such a mellow mood. You know, he said, I used to be a male whore. And I'm laughing because I'm so happy that I finally found Jesus. The waitress smiled nervously as she filled our cups, and then hurried back to her perch behind the counter. We drank off the coffee and traded a few more stories about the horrors of the latter-day drug market. Then Jerry said they would have to get moving. We're heading for Baltimore, he said. What about you? Washington, I said. What for? Lester asked. Why the fuck would anybody want to go there? I shrugged. We were standing in the parking lot while my Doberman pissed on the wheel of a big Hard Brothers poultry truck. Well, that's a weird sort of trip, I said finally. What happened is that I finally got a job after 12 years. Jesus, said Lester. That's heavy. 12 years on the dole. Man, you must have been really strung out. I smiled. Yeah, I guess you could say that. What kind of a job? Jerry asked. Now the Doberman had the driver of the Hard Brothers truck backed up against the cab, screeching hysterically at the dog, kicking out with his metal-toed army boots. We watched with vague amusement as the Doberman, puzzled by this crazy outburst, backed off and growled a warning. Oh God, Jesus! Screamed the trucker. Somebody help me! It was clear that he felt he was about to be chewed up and killed for no reason at all, by some vicious animal that had come out of the darkness to pin him against his own truck. Okay, Benji, I shouted. Don't fool that man, he's nervous. The trucker shook his fist at me and yelled something about getting my license number. Get out of here, you asshole, Lester screamed. It's pigs like you that give Dobermans a bad name. And Jerry laughed as the trucker drove off. You won't last long on the drive. You won't last long on the job with a dog like that. Yes, or said. Or whatever he felt like doing at the time. Seriously. What kind of work do you do? It's a political gig, I said. I'm going to Washington to cover the 72 presidential campaign for Rolling Stone. Jesus Christ, Jerry muttered. Well, that's weird. The Stone is into politics. I stared down at the asphalt, not sure what to say. Was the Stone into politics? Or was it just me? I never really worried about it, or wondered. But suddenly, on the outskirts of Washington, in the cold gray dawn of this truck stop near Breezewood, just north of the Maryland line, it suddenly occurred to me I couldn't really say what I was doing there, except heading for D.C., with an orange pig-shaped trailer, and a Doberman pinscher with bad bowels after too many days on the road. It sounds like a stinging goddamn way to get back into work, said Lester. Why don't you hang up that bullshit? And we'll put something together with that car shuttle Jerry told you about. I shook my head. No, I want to at least try this trip, I said. Lester stared at me for a moment, then shrugged. Well, goddamn, he said. What a bummer. Why would anybody want to get hung up on a pile of shit like politics? Well, I said, wondering if there was any sane answer to a question like that. It's mainly a personal trip. Very hard thing to explain. Jerry smiled. You talk like you've tried it, he asked, or said. Like maybe you got off on it. Not as far as I meant to, I said. But definitely high. Lester was watching me now with new interest. I always thought about that. I always thought that about politicians, he said, or asked. Just a gang of goddamn power junkies gone off on their own strange trips. Come on now, said Jerry. Some of those guys are okay. Who? Lester asked. That's why I'm going to Washington, I said. To check out the people and find out if they're all swine. Don't worry, said Lester, they are. You might as well go looking for cherries in a Baltimore whorehouse. Okay, I said. I'll see you when I make it over to Baltimore. I stuck out my hand and Jerry took it in a quick, conventional handshake. But Lester had his thumb up, so I had to adjust for the Revolutionary Drug Brothers grip, or rip, or is rip, or rip, or hip, rip, no, or whatever that goddamn thing is supposed to mean. When you move across the country these days, you have to learn about 19 different handshakes between Berkeley and Boston. He's right, said Jerry. Those bastards wouldn't even be there if they weren't rotten. He shook his head without looking at us, staring balefully across the parking lot. The gray light of dawn was getting brighter now. Thursday night was dying, and the highway at the other end of the parking lot was humming with cars, full of people towing goo work on Friday forning. Welcome to Washington, D.C. That's what I said. About 25 miles, if you know. Here's some black, little Miss Boy, the Harrison Group. Just in front of Maryland. Street follows mouth. With factory towels on both sides and back. The outfit stolen between here and wild. It's not considered fashionable living there, did it? Suddenly, in final place in Jordan, and he's breathing hard. With about wealth, they was my mother. Jordan has water in the lame and the griffin field. But not really, it's more like the old town setting it up. Where the leading citizens where leading citizens and how bright play one is. Small and tailor-made joints. The same people in the town. Drinking lawyers, journalists, build grounds, real selling food, pound bottles, you know. Dinner day, a drink, got no somewhere. And no garbage on if you go where it happened. I remember back then, I arrived from when my journalist press call. I'm out on level. I'm on everyone else I know, or I've ever done with. Living in the green, but there's something go over on the white side of the hospital. But that's the man. The other girl is kind of that popular man. I know thing is the president across the road in the air from my room.
Well, the wishes everybody to explain that. But the wishes appears to be rooted in the his idea that the people who from never presented, not even the rediscarded connections, speech, facts, and their words activists and test dropouts won't even bother to register, much less drag themselves to the poll on election day. Maybe some. But it is hard to recall many candidates who is next week who back the move what is their called and make the remote to the polls if they actually represented it.
It sure as hell wasn't the AFL-CIO that ran out the day on the White House in 1958. And it wasn't Jim McCarthy either. It was the people who voted for McCarthy in New Hampshire that beat Johnson. And it wasn't Jordan Meany who got shot with Bobby Kennedy in Los Angeles. It was a renegade radical organizer from the UK media. It wasn't the big-time Democratic bosses who won the California primary battle, but thousands of and white prefects who were tired of being guys for not being with a man in the White House. Nobody has dragged over a poll in November, but there was, of course, the murder. And then the convention in Chicago finally turned him, called Homer. He appealed to respectable Democrat, then not. If Humphrey or any of his greedy old runs have a youth, he'll bring another debacle like that. I don't know how to see Mr. White in 1956. The people who turned out for Bobby is sitting there, along with several million others who've been voting for the first time. But they don't turn out for Humphrey and Jackson and Muslim or any other neo-Nixon act. They would not even come up with a copy of the national business keep calling a noble user. According to the California river, the undercover bar is burning up a beautiful little steam behind Ted Kennedy. and it just kinda went out. Nobody had to drag him to the boat, no banana. And then when I got him murdered, and then they came back and they gave him a really technical number. He put up his possible certificate, so now, and remember, and it was crazy up 172. He would be on board at the bucket like he has in all the teams of my own that he really took. The people turn out the bottles are I don't know $7 million to be written for the first time. They don't turn out to open the back of the boxes. Just we're going to the towers and the towers and that's the place where just kept trying for another I told the police however, beyond the culture vote, is being the benefit for his team, beside that candidate, and his draft has begun to cause genuine and with breakfast plausible daughters. The mere mention of candidate name is starting up next to my crop all over his body such as it is. His fathers have already started the last cases of his methods to us. Calling him a lord, and a coward, and a traitor. And the Lord is a the last is a woman. The better man was in this, and by God is